So before we begin about Mary, I want to hear what do you know about Mary? What are your impressions of her? What do you think of her? Anybody, any words that come to mind when you think of Mary?
Blessed.
Yeah, Blessed Mother.
Queen of the Saints. Intercessor.
Great.
First disciple.
Mm-hmm. Anybody think of her as like meek and mild, weak? Anything like that?
She brings hope.
She brings help. Okay.
Okay,
So one of
strong.
go ahead.
She had to be strong.
She had to be strong,
To know
right?
what she went through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The reason I ask is because I've had a devotion to Mary all my life. And when I was younger, I always thought of her as being obedient. I think in some songs, there are songs where they say she's meek and mild.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of thought of her, not maybe weak, but, just, okay, I'll do whatever God says he wants me to do. But then several years ago, gosh, this is going more than 10 years ago now, I was taking a class and I read this book by Sister Joan Chittister, and it's on the Creed, but it just changed my view of Mary, which it sounds like you guys already have that view, but she was saying that it was hard for her to respect Mary because her mother was a strong woman, and she didn't think that Mary was a very strong woman. But then she realized in starting to study her that how strong she really was. And it's interesting because of the gospel today, thinking of it in those terms too. So she says that this was a woman who made up her mind outside of the law, alone, independent of keepers or guards. This was a woman who risked everything to do what she knew her God required of her, whatever it cost, socially, publicly, spiritually. This was a woman who acted alone, outside the permission of the systems and the traditions around her. This was a woman who inserted herself into a public situation and directed Jesus to do the same, despite the fact that he said he was not ready to do so. She had a strong will, a strong faith, a strong sense of self, and deep spiritual stamina. So, thinking of what we just heard today in the gospel, and actually what Father Fragamini was talking about too, he was talking about surrendering our wills to God. And I think people, at least in society today, maybe not people in this room, would think that surrendering your will to somebody is being weak. But in this case, you're being strong. And if you think about in the gospel where they brought the woman to be stoned, and this was exactly what would have happened to Mary if Joseph had decided to give her, to divorce her, right? She could have been stoned because she was pregnant outside of marriage. But when the angel came to her and told her that you're going to bear the Son of God, she said, okay. She didn't have any, she had been praying for a Messiah. She didn't know that she was going to be the mother of the Messiah, but she had been praying for him all along. So she knew her faith. She knew what was supposed to happen. And when the angel came to her, he actually called her, he said to her, hail actually means rejoice. So he's saying, rejoice, Mary. And he told her she was full of grace. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but full of grace means that she was full of, that's where we get the teaching that she was born sinless, is because she was full of grace. And her response, and then he said that she would give birth to a son, and he would be called the Most High. She believed it. She didn't, the only thing she was troubled at, because throughout the Bible, people have, angels have come to people. And Zechariah was one of those people he came to. And Zechariah was more troubled at what God was about to do. He didn't believe that God could give them a child in their old age. But actually Mary just was troubled that she was being called full of grace. She wasn't troubled at what he was saying, that you're going to be the mother of God. And her response was, I'm the handmaid of the Lord. Be it done unto me according to thy word. So she was fine. She surrendered it all, and she gave it all. How many of you have seen Big Fat Greek Wedding? Okay, so in Big Fat Greek Wedding, do you remember the scene where the father is talking about being the head of the household? He's the head, and the mother is the neck, right? So we believe that Mary is the neck, that she joins the head, which is God, and we are the body of Christ. So Mary helps to turn the head of God. She can help turn us too, right? So she intercedes between us. She joins us, okay? I know one of the biggest things that, Protestants believe, I don't think any of you've all been baptized Catholic, right? So you've been brought up with that tradition. But one of the big things is people think that we worship Mary. We don't worship Mary. We honor her. We honor her as the mother of God, the mother of Christ. And people think that we put Mary above Jesus. We don't. We do not put Mary above Jesus. We honor her as the mother of God, and Mary will only lead us to Jesus. Just like Chris said, she was the first disciple. She was the first one who believed that Christ would come because she said yes to him coming. It was kind of funny. I was teaching kindergarten one time and told the kids, we were talking about during Advent, and said, what would have happened if Mary had said no? And the kids said, well, Jesus couldn't have come. And obviously God, all powerful, he could have found a different way. But he chose to do this through Mary. And what's very interesting is we call her yes, her fiat. And through her giving her fiat and giving God a body in the incarnation, she actually enabled then Jesus to give his yes later on. And feel free to ask any questions along the way.
What does fiat mean?
It's yes. It means giving her yes.
So any fiat is just yes.
Mm-hmm. Even the car. No, I'm kidding.
I got that's a good one. I got most. I think most.
I didn't want you guys to ask questions. No, I'm sorry.
Good luck.
I think most Bible versions don't say full of grace. They say highly favored one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why exactly the distinction. I don't know the distinction of that.
No, I don't. But
Exactly.
still, favored one. She's favored by God. So
Right, it's a little more ambiguous
Mm-hmm.
than the full grace. But,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's favored by God. But
Wouldn't you think her family would notice that beforehand? I mean, as she's growing up, if she's full of grace and cannot commit a sin, then she would know that she's different.
well, and some traditions tell us that she grew up in the temple, that they had her dedicated in the temple. Some even say that she sewed the curtain to the Holy of Holies, which is very interesting, that she lived in the temple as she grew up. And even of her virginity, that when she was, I can't think of the word, but when she was brought to the temple, she at that point presented at the temple, she at that point, there are some traditions that say took vows of perpetual virginity. So that even when she was betrothed to Joseph, it was always understood that she was going to remain a virgin. And some traditions, yeah. So I think in some ways they may have known that she was set apart. Her parents actually even set her apart. Mm-hmm. So it could be. I don't know if any of you have seen the Nativity movie. It's a good movie. I'm not too crazy about the way they portray Mary, because she looks like. Has anybody seen that movie?
Yeah.
No. Okay. I know you have, but they kind of almost portray her as, rather than, in the Bible we hear she ponders, and I don't know, I always have thought of her as being very peaceful when she's pondering and kind of joyful. This one kind of shows her as a teenager in angst. She's kind of, I don't know, not very happy, never smiles, and I don't know, I would feel that, and she doesn't seem very peaceful, so I don't know, it's just my own. So Mary, if you've heard that, I don't know how much you guys have talked about this, but as Jesus becomes a new Adam, he came to save our sins. Mary is like the new Eve. So when we talk about God, when he created the world, he already had this whole plan in mind from the very beginning of creation. And just like when we read about creation and God created the world, He didn't create it violently. He just spoke it into a word. And the same thing when he asked Mary, he asked permission. He didn't. He gave her the choice. She had the free will. She could have said no. And again, as we said, he could have come into the world anyway. But he chose to come to a teenage girl. We believe that she was about 13, 14 years old. I mean, how many of you would want a 13, 14-year-old girl taking care of you? My daughter's 18, and I'm still not sure. But he made himself so vulnerable, coming as a baby, and to humans alone, trusting us, but then to this young girl, he brought himself. And Mary, her humility too, if you think about it, you've just been told that you're going to be the mother of God, the mother of the Messiah, in Jewish tradition. Well, she could have gone and said, well, hey, I could sit back. I'm going to be the mother of the Messiah. Everybody has to take care of me, But instead, she ran out and went to see Elizabeth, because she knew her cousin was expecting a child also. And we believe then, when she went to visit Elizabeth said that the baby leapt in her womb. So as Mary was the first disciple, then we'd say that John the Baptist, would be the second disciple, because he recognized Jesus even before he was born. And that's why Mary and John, we have holy days for both of them. He's the only other saint besides Mary that we'll have a holy day for, because of the fact that they recognized Jesus even before he was born.
A birthday, you're saying?
A birthday. We celebrate his birthday. Thank you. So what do we know about Mary, and how have we learned about Mary? We've learned about her in the Bible. Obviously, that's where, and actually, especially the Gospel of Luke tells us a whole lot about Mary. And then sometimes the first couple chapters of Luke are called the Gospels of Mary. And what's interesting is that some traditions have that Mary, and if you think about it, how else would Luke have gotten the story? Is if, Mary hadn't passed down the stories of his birth and his, when the angel came to her. How else could anybody have known about that? It had to have been her, I think anyway. And that's what some traditions say. Through the Word of God, we've also learned about through tradition. As I said before, there's some traditions that say that she was presented at the temple. How do we get what her age is? I don't know if anybody's ever thought about that, but we get her age because in Jewish tradition, because she had been betrothed to Joseph, that Jewish girls were usually betrothed about the age of 13, 14. That's why we think that that's the age that she was. And gospel scholars just glean so much. They can look at a word or two in a sentence and get so much out of it. And I brought a bunch of books for you guys to look at if you want to, but one of my favorites, and this is, we had done a Bible study a few years ago on Mary, Edward Street. He's really great at the history.
The Jewish side.
I'm sorry?
The Jewish side.
Yes. He studied the Bible. Again, I'm hoping that we can do this Bible study again, but if you just wanted to get, it's the study he did was Walking with Mary Through the Scriptures, but this book is a very simple read, and he, again, just by certain words, certain sentences, he's even figured out the historical Mary, or looked back to see the history. Scott Hahn is another one. Hail Holy Queen is another book. It's a very good book if you wanted to learn more about Mary. That one tells us a lot of good things. And then another one of my favorites is this Mark Miravalli, Meet Your Mother. He also is a great scholar. And actually a lot of the things that I have and a lot of the notes I have are actually from him, because our son took a class with him on Mariology. So he has just taught so much about it. So some of the other things, so as I was saying, we believe Mary to be the new Eve, that she came just like the old Eve helped to bring sin into the world, she and Adam, right? The new Eve, Mary, helped to bring Jesus into the world and helped us in our redemption, or helped to bring Jesus so that he could redeem the world. We also believe that Mary, we compare her or believe that she's the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark in the Old Testament, the Ark was where they carried the law and the manna They brought the manna and their food, and just in that way, Mary carried Jesus in her, who was the Word, who was the law, who was the food. She carried all that. We have some, did you ever talk about dogmas and doctrines of the church or anything?
A little bit.
Okay, so there are some dogmas which are things that we believe. In the Catholic Church, there's dogmas and there are doctrines. Dogmas are things that are, I believe, they're laws.
Do you have to believe?
We have to believe them.
Yeah.
So, a few of the things that we say that we have to believe is Mary's the mother of God, right? Some people, there were some heresies where they believed she was only the mother of the human Jesus, of the man. And that was a heresy, because if you thought that she was only the mother of the man, then how could Jesus have been God and man in one? And again, that's one of the mysteries, but we have to, and we call her, in Greek it's Theotokos. It's the belief that Mary is the mother of God. And by being the mother of God, then she's also been called the Queen of Heaven. Why do they call her the Queen of Heaven? I know my brother-in-law, one time we had said we'd gone to the church. There's a church in Orlando when we go there, and it's called Mary, Queen of the Universe. Well, how could she be a queen? Well, in Jewish tradition, the queen was not the wife of the king, but it was the mother of the king, because of the fact that a lot of kings had harems. They had a lot of wives. So which wife was he going to choose? So the queen mother, she would have been the queen. Another dogma is we believe in her perpetual virginity. We believe that she was a virgin before Jesus was born. She was a virgin after Jesus was born. She maintained that virginity. There are even traditions, there are some people that will say that even during birth, she remained a virgin. She did not have labor pains. Jesus came out almost like through a glass,
Through a glass.
Like through a glass, right? That he just came out, that even there she maintained her virginity. There's also the question of, people ask about, in the Bible, it's mentioned, brothers and sisters. Jesus had brothers and sisters, but there have, people have said that the words in Greek for brothers and sisters are actually the words for close relatives, cousins, so that would be, so they wouldn't necessarily be siblings. And also, if he had siblings, then why would Jesus have given John given Mary to John at the foot of the cross? So otherwise, she would have gone traditionally to another son, because women were to be cared for in that day. Just thought of something. Okay, so actually what I wanted to get back at, and Mary, when we talked about her fiat, and she said yes. She said yes again and again. The story of the wedding at Cana, she was present there when Jesus performed his first miracle. She actually encouraged him to perform his first miracle. If you remember the story, when she says they have no wine, he went and he said, "Woman, what does that have to do with me?" Why would he call him woman? If, somebody would call you woman, by not calling you by your name or saying mom or whatever, kind of insulting, right? I know if one of my
Mary.
sons said, "Hey,
Mary."
woman," but actually there he was comparing her to the woman in Genesis. So he was actually asking her if she was okay with it, because he was saying, "My time has not yet come." And he was kind of saying to her, if we start this now, if I perform this miracle now, we're going. It's starting. My ministry is starting, and we're beginning our way to the cross. So he kind of was giving her the option of when if she was ready to. And that's in some ways where there actually are people who are trying to get, because calling her the co-mediatrix, that she actually was also being a redeemer along with Jesus. So what did she say? What was her response? She just ignored him and said, "Do whatever he tells you." So she was pretty much saying, again, "Yes, I'm ready." So he was able to perform his first miracle and then started his ministry as well.
And just in general, calling someone woman back then may not have been an insult.
Right,
Today it is. You
Today
have to
it
think
is,
how long
right.
ago this was.
right.
It's the same word as Eve.
Mm-hmm. Woman and Eve,
So-
right. So again, he's asking her and he's calling her by that. We also believe in another dogma that we have is the Immaculate Conception. So everybody know what the Immaculate Conception is? Because I know sometimes people think that the Immaculate Conception is actually when Jesus was conceived, but it is actually Mary was conceived without sin. So that's another dogma. And again, sorry to the men in here, but woman was God's greatest creation. He saved her for last. So,
No apologies necessary. We all know.
And Mary is the most perfect work. She's his masterpiece. Second only to the humanity of Jesus. And some people say that the devil hates her more than he hates God because she's the perfect human, and the devil hates humans. And actually, there was one apparition, which was so do you know about apparitions? Apparitions are where Mary has appeared to people in personal. Some people have seen her. So there was one where not all apparitions are real. So there was one where I believe Mary appeared to, I think it was a nun, and we thought it was Mary, or they thought it was Mary who had appeared in the form of Mary. And I guess the nun, I don't know how the story went exactly, but asked Mary was able to pray the Our Father, but when asked to pray the Hail Mary, it couldn't. This vision couldn't, and it was actually the devil, because he couldn't pray the Hail Mary. So, interesting story.
Yeah.
That's freaky.
So, I don't know. I always love those stories. Okay, and then the next, the fourth dogma on Mary is the Assumption, is that she was assumed into heaven, body and soul. Our Western tradition believes that she did die and then was assumed into heaven. Eastern tradition, they call it the dormition of Mary, because they just believe she fell asleep and then was taken to heaven, that she never actually died. And that is kind of bringing her, trying to make her like Jesus, right? That he ascended into heaven. Because he's God, he could do it himself. So ascending, he did it on his own. Assumption means that somebody helped her. So God assumed her into heaven. And then the fifth dogma, as I said earlier, that they're trying to make is that she's the co-mediatrix, that she did help in the salvation of humanity. She did walk along with Jesus. She walked when Jesus was presented at the temple. She was told that a sword would pierce her own heart. She experienced it, maybe not physically the way Jesus did, but spiritually. Obviously, if a family member is suffering, you suffer along with them. Any questions so far? Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is some devotions to Mary. So, and I brought a few things. Obviously, the rosary. So the rosary, I know people who think that the rosary, we're just repeating Hail Marys. Okay. The rosary is actually where we can pray different mysteries of the rosary. There's 20 different mysteries of the rosary. Originally, there were only 15. We have the joyful mysteries, which talk about the Annunciation, where we found out that Jesus was going to be born. Okay, I've got to go through this all now. The Annunciation, the Visitation, where after Mary found out that she was pregnant, that she went off to see Elizabeth. She visited Elizabeth. Then the Nativity, when Jesus is actually born. That's the third glorious or joyful mystery. The presentation of Jesus in the temple. And then finally finding Jesus in the temple when he was 12 years old. So those are the 5 joyful mysteries. Then we have sorrowful mysteries. The sorrowful mysteries are Jesus' agony in the garden, the scourging at the pillar, crowning with thorns, carrying his cross, and the crucifixion. Then we have the glorious mysteries. Glorious mysteries, obviously the resurrection, the ascension into heaven of Jesus, the descent of the Holy Spirit, where Jesus is given to us, or sends the Holy Spirit down on us, the Assumption of Mary, and the coronation of Mary as Queen of Heaven and Earth. So those were the original 15 mysteries that we had. Pope John Paul II who was very devoted to Mary. You know, his mother died at a young age, and after that, he really, took Mary as a spiritual mother. He brought, he thought that there were some parts of Jesus's life missing. So, as you've heard, all of the mysteries of the Rosary, we're talking about Jesus's life. We're not, even though we pray Hail Marys on the beads, we're not talking about Mary. We're talking about Jesus's life. We're walking through the Bible with Jesus. So Pope John Paul II thought that there were some parts missing in his life, so he added 5 decades, or 5 more mysteries. He added the luminous mysteries. And the luminous mysteries kind of fill in some of those empty spots. So he added when Jesus was baptized, by John the Baptist. He added the wedding at Cana, Jesus' first mystery. Jesus' first miracle. He added the proclamation of the kingdom, where Jesus is proclaiming the good news that he had a kingdom in heaven. He added Transfiguration, where he takes Peter, John, and James up the mountain, and they see Elijah and Moses, and they kind of almost get a quick vision of heaven, and Jesus transformed. And then Transfiguration and the institution of the Eucharist, when he did the Last Supper. So those were 5 extra mysteries that were added from Pope John Paul. He had a great devotion to Mary. His whole pontificate was a devotion to Mary. And if you ever read about him in any of his history, he was shot on the day of I think the appearance of Our Lady of Fatima. Mm-hmm. And when he was shot, the bullet just narrowly missed his heart. And he credits that to Mary, that she saved him. And actually, if you go and hear some of the, what's the word? I'm trying to think, that Mary announced in her apparitions to the
secrets?
The secrets, yes, thank you, the secrets. That one of the secrets was that someone in white would be shot. And I can't remember all the rest of it. But actually then they took his bullet, and they actually put the bullet in the crown of Mary in Fatima. So that's the Rosary. Another thing is the brown scapular. Brown scapular, I don't know a whole lot about, but I think she appeared to a Carmelite or on Mount Carmel or something, and told them to wear the brown scapular. If you wear this, it's supposed to protect you at your death. So some people wear it all the time. And there's a picture, I think, of the Immaculate Heart and the Sacred Heart. And then there's a picture of Mary with baby. Another thing then is miraculous medal. I have some miraculous medals here. One of the things that I have done in my life, and Pope John Paul II also, he brought about, it's the total consecration to Jesus through Mary. So we call it a Marian consecration. But his name was St. Louis de Montfort, and he is the one, he didn't start it, but he's the one who really brought it out. And he wrote this True Devotion to Mary. It's a difficult book to read because it's written, it's from, I can't remember what century he was alive. So it's kind of difficult to read, but it's got a lot of interesting things to teach you about Mary and how Mary intercedes for us, and how Mary, because some people will say, well, why can't we just pray directly to God? Just pray to Jesus, to God. You can, and you certainly can, but we believe that Mary kind of can get us in through the back door. She turns the head, she intercedes for us. She can take our prayers, which as humans we believe that, it's almost like he compares it to trying to bring the king a tray of fruit, but our fruit is all rotten. And that Mary will take it and make it, change it, and bring in the fresh fruit and make it the tray look beautiful. So he can't turn her down. And obviously he wouldn't turn his mother down. There's this joke where all these people are getting into heaven, that Peter's the gatekeeper, and Jesus comes to Peter one day and says, how are all these people getting into heaven? Aren't you guarding the gate? And he's like, well, I'm sorry, your mom's letting them in through the back door. Something that she's done, we believe that she does that. So Mary, we could also compare her. She always leads you back to Jesus. She doesn't, do it for her own glory. We compare her also to the moon. So Jesus is the sun, Mary's the moon. She just reflects the light of the sun. Let's see. Yep, I think that's about it. Oh, but anyway, if you're ever interested in doing the consecration, the St. Louis de Montfort one is difficult, but there's one called 33 Days to Morning Glory. It is, and we've done this here at the parish too. Father Michael Gately. It's a much easier one. It's a more modern one. He has taught, it's 33 days. It's a 33-day preparation to get you there. But I can tell you, in our own life and in our own family, doing this consecration has done, grace-filled things for our family. Actually, almost everybody in our family, we have one holdout. Joey has not done it. Our middle son hasn't done it. This is actually his book because I couldn't find mine and I went and stole it out of his room. But
It's unused.
It's unused. It's brand new. His brother gave it to him for Christmas, hoping that he would do it. Okay, I know I kind of went through a lot and was all over the place. Anybody have any questions or anything?
That was awesome.
Thank you.
What were the four things again? What were
The
four
dogmas?
dogmas?
And one other thing I did forget. Okay.
Do what you need to do.
Well, just the dogmas are Mother of God, perpetual virginity, immaculate conception, and assumption. But one of the other things I kind of wanted to talk about really quickly was the saints. Mary, we consider her the queen of the saints. I think somebody over here said queen of the saints. We believe in the communion of saints. Again, there are some Protestants who are like, why do you have all these statues? Why do you have all these pictures of because the communion of saints is like they're our family. So we honor these people, just like you have pictures of your family members in your house. That's why we have pictures and statues of the saints. And we look to the saints, and some people have their own patron saints. We look to them because they were just like us. They were human. Some of them, you read stories about them, and from the time they were young, they seemed like they were perfect, set aside. Some of them, St. Louis de Montfort, one of my favorite stories about him, is that he was a priest and he was, out preaching, and he'd gotten into a lot of trouble. He had a church that was like his kind of chapel, whatever, was next to a bar. And it was really loud one night, and, he just got really angry and went into the bar and started beating up all the people. He was, all the guys in the bar. But the interesting thing was the next day, they were at Mass. so there's a lot of them. St. Augustine, right? I think, what was his famous quote? Like, make me good, but not yet.
Yeah.
He led this crazy life of, So there are some saints who weren't that great of people, but they then surrendered to God. And I thought that was great with Father Fergamini today. You surrender. You follow his will. You're not giving up anything. You are just doing what he asks you to do.
Give your fiat.
Your fiat. You're giving your yes. And I think God won't put anything in your heart that wouldn't be, that you wouldn't have the desire to do anyway. And you just say yes to that. And I like to call it, when the Holy Spirit leads you to do something, my new word for it is holy nudge. You get that nudge to do something. The other person, Saint Therese of Lisieux. She's a pretty popular saint. She was pretty good through her whole life. She was, when she went into the convent, I think she was 16 years old. But she had anxiety. She had some temper tantrums and stuff, but God even helped her with that. The interesting thing was that she did things in a simple way. Everything was very simple. She just did little things. And that's why she's called the little way. And one of the stories I like about her is that there was this nun in her order who was really mean and really gave her a hard time.